Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Crossing the Axis, the business side of video production. I am lucky enough today to be with two fellas from, I'll let you introduce yourselves. Go ahead. Steve Jolly here.
Yeah. Thank you, Max. My name is Steve Jolly and owner of Element Studio here in High Point, North Carolina.
And I'm Alex Manning. I'm the director of video production here at Elements.
Awesome. And these two have been kind enough to meet with us today, do this interview. And we are going to be talking about client relationships, which is something that is pretty critical if you're going to succeed in this. I'd love to just ask you a few questions for our listeners about Elements to give them an idea of, first of all, just where are you located and what kind of work do you do?
Yeah, we're located in High Point, North Carolina, which is kind of considered the triad area, central North Carolina. And we have been studio for a little over 11 years. And we do video production as well as some photography throughout the Southeast.
All right, awesome. What's the size of your team and what's the size of your annual revenues, just roughly to give our listeners an idea of what kind of company you've got there?
Yeah, sure, Max. We have 12 employees and we do a little over 1.5 million in annual revenues.
Perfect. And I know you also have a really big studio down there. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. It is. Yep. Thank goodness.
22,000.
We started smaller, but we currently have a 22,000 square foot space with about 4 different stages with green screen, sound stage, different capabilities.
And what's the breakdown of your work? If we're thinking about like corporate, commercial, how would you kind of break it down?
I'd say probably 50% corporate, 25% commercial, 25% other.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome.
I would agree with that.
Any clients that our folks would know about that you could, I mean, obviously I know some of those relationships are secret, but any clients that you work with on a regular basis?
What's the work on the website? Volvo. We've done stuff for Volvo, Daimler. We've done stuff for
Hanes Brands.
Hanes Brands. Big Rock Sports.
And Truist.
Which
formerly BB&T Banking, but their new name.
Fabulous. Wow. It's a great enviable roster to have. And so I'm going to jump right into talking about client experience. And I'm going to ask you, what do you think when you think about client experience?
That's a good question. Immediately, let's make it positive. I think, the client experience it's obviously the journey through the project from the client perspective, how they feel about the project and you, maybe even more so than the project and the company. I think it begins in the culture side of things and kind of the expectations of the relationship and them looking at your work and talking to you and going, is this somebody I want to work with?
And I would probably say too, it's really in your perspective. Some folks might take a project experience focus versus a client experience, with the project focus being much more transactional and short term versus, our perspective has always been to look at this, even if it's just for now a one-off project, that it's really a client experience we're going after to create that long-term relationship, so that it's more value driven versus transactional. So I think it really has to start with kind of identifying who you are as an organization first.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of folks that have been very successful in video production say you can throw out all the marketing stuff. It all starts and ends with relationships. Is that something that you?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I would say we agree with it 1,000%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I said, every client that comes to us, when we first meet with them, Max, our point of reference is we always tell them, we're not here to talk about this project alone. We want you to understand this is about a relationship. So the whole point is to understand them, get to know them so that they feel comfortable and understand we're not there, again, for this project, but to form a relationship with them.
And how's that working out? How long are your average client relationships, would you say?
Pretty darn good. That's something we really pride ourselves on. We've had clients, our turnover is from a client's perspective is 0 to none. I mean, people really like us. They like working with us. And I feel like at some point, like we've proven that we can do what they're asking for plus.
Right.
And
Right.
then it's even more about the relationship at that point. You got to still step it up, got to still, make sure you're delivering the freshest, newest, coolest thing. But that's also part of the relationship too, right? You don't want things to go stale. So you put in the work, come up with something great, and approach them about it too. Keep things fresh. It's like dating.
So I'm really and truly, our retention rate's around 85 to 90% of our clients. Ever since we started, to be honest with you, Max.
And when it's so hard to get those clients, being able to retain them is everything, right? I mean,
exactly.
the process of getting a new client and either pulling them from a competitor or getting them on board and to trust you. I mean, gosh, to lose them is such a major deal. So let's talk about that for a second before we go into how you create a great client experience. Let's just just kind of rehash those values of what we see the core value of having a positive experience with your client.
I obviously trust 100%. That only comes through effective communication, over communication in many cases, right? Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is where we're heading. We're talking about the process. We're defining expectations as we go along. It's like any other relationship. Video production is no different. It's you have to, obviously personalities need to mesh. You have that whole, interpersonal relationship sort of side of things, but it is expectations, and it's set expectations and communications, and when in doubt, over communicate until they sometimes have to tell you, hey, you don't have to send me that email, but thank you. And that, you're in a good place when that's the case.
Yeah. And the only thing I'd add is what you said and referenced, Max, was how difficult it is to get new clients. So if you create that, build value into the customer experience, we found we go in and kind of land and expand. We find that it might be a very small, simple project, but by building there and going into the other aspects of the organization, then we're able to really maximize what the opportunities are there.
Right. Absolutely. Is it, on the flip side, let's just real quick, what's the danger of having a bad client experience?
Homelessness, it's a little scary, right? I mean, especially if they're a large client and you don't meet their expectations, or you make some major miscommunication. I mean, we're all human, obviously things happen, but it's not good. It's not good because, bad news spreads fast, and you honestly just, you can't afford it. You can't afford it if you want to grow, and you can't afford, really that's it.
All right. So we covered the obvious. Now let's talk about the how. And so I'm right off the bat, I'm curious, is the client experience something that you literally sit down and have figured out and planned out, or is it something that, derives from one sort of North Star ideal? Is it, how does a good client experience come to be?
I feel like it's hard because you don't want it to feel contrived. You don't want to, walk up to them every time you see them with fresh baked cookies, their favorite meal, and tickets to the game. But at the same time, it needs to be a part of your workflow like anything else, and it needs to come from the right people at the right time, usually after a major success. To that positive reinforcement, or during the dark times, or actor dropping out of the project, or a major budget cut, just being transparent and honest with them. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
And I would say it's evolved here at Elements. Every experience you go through, you kind of sit back and evaluate. So over time, we've kind of seen how our clients respond to different things, but it does become something that we strive to make sure that we're repeating every time with the client. But, every client is different. So I would say the high level, basic foundational things, those are pretty much set and repeatable. And then we just have to kind of play the cards as they're dealt on some of the other parts of the experience.
Great. So let's just kind of walk through the process of a production and kind of talk about the different touch points and places where you're able to bring a high level of customer experience for folks. So let's say we're starting with a brand new client that doesn't know you. And so what are the tactics you take on a first impression, first meeting basis?
So I say if you're at the point that you're talking to them, they do know you to some extent. Your website exists, your Instagram exists. there is some expectation set, or unless it's a true cold call, right? And it's like, going into that, it's like you need to know what you're projecting, and the general response to that from clients, brand new client we're talking, right? And Steve was talking about it earlier. It's a dialogue. It's always a dialogue. If they're talking to you and you got to sell your project, or you're talking to them about a project, it's a dialogue. It's your first date. You got to listen. Then you can speak.
And just like we all know, first impressions are hard to overcome if they're negative impressions. So you really have to pay attention to, as Alex was saying, your website, how current it is, how clean it is,
right.
Because they're going to judge you based on that.
Right. Yeah. And what do you see? I mean, in those first meetings, obviously, I always found it difficult. You so badly want to talk about yourself. It's so difficult to be quiet and really let them be first and foremost in their product or whatever the element is that they're working with you on. What are some tricks to shut yourself up and remind yourself it's about them? Because I always found that really difficult.
Just stuff your mouth with food, and if it's over a dinner, or talk about talk about somebody else. That's a great question. I think it's because you don't want to jump into it, right? You don't want to I think maybe you have to feel out: am I still selling myself? Or have they chosen me? They like our portfolio, and hey, they're going with us, and they just want to get to know us. I feel like it's maybe one of the two. But their expectation, it's a little hard to read.
Yeah, so we really try to drive into the point internally that if you don't know them, how can you talk to them about what their needs are?
Research.
Yeah. So the research piece.
Research. Come knowing way more than you should about their company, and they will instantly, react to it. They'll love it.
Give you credibility.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we always wind up being the dilettantes of every industry, right? I mean, we wind up learning things about the different industries that most people don't know or have to know. It's one of the best parts of our job, is just getting in there and finding out how things actually worked in order to make the right video. So I guess that all makes sense. Here's a random question. What do you wear? I was always struggling with this. Do you dress? If you're meeting with IBM, do you all wear ties? I don't even know if IBM wears ties anymore. If you're meeting with finance, do you try to dress to the client, or do you just try to dress to who you are? This was something that I always would.
I say if you're meeting with a creative director, you just dress like you do every day. And if it's full suits, then you shoot to match. I just like, be yourself, obviously, but if you're going to go formal versus not, it depends on who you're talking to. No question. Because you show up to a shoot, and
is anyone formal anymore?
Not really.
Not really. I will say, though, depending on the client we're going after, like if we're talking to Truist Banks, then we kind of take a tag team approach when we're going in for that first meeting or calls, whereas Alex will deal more with the creative overview, who we are creatively, and I'll deal more with the business side and who we are operationally, so that they can give an Alex leeway to kind of dress more appropriate to that.
Yeah, right.
With, I might just have a dress shirt on, or sometimes a sports coat, but it truly is dependent on the client, because you certainly don't want to overdress, so they think, oh, this is really going to be expensive.
And it really works out too. I mean, I would say that, the people that are more focused on the business side of things, is this a credible place that we can trust? And are they gonna, be, can we trust them with their money? Like, they look at Steve and they go, yeah, that's the business guy. That's him.
Yeah. We really try to separate, to be honest with you, Max, so the creative can talk creative, and they don't have to worry about the financial piece.
Why is that? That's a great point. Why do you do that? And obviously that's something that only a little bit more mature company can afford to do, because you actually have multiple people to go out on the call and do all that kind of stuff. But why do you find that to be a value to divide and conquer like that?
I think probably because of the personalities that are present, with the clients. Some people just feel more comfortable talking about the numbers and talking about the business side of things and the objectives and the accomplishment, what they're trying to accomplish. And some people just want to talk about storytelling and want to talk about the visualization side thing and what you're thinking from a creative side. It's just it really puts everybody at ease because you're getting.
Yeah, and I would say
sides.
internally, from my perspective, it allows the creative team to truly be creative. Now, certainly the budget might drive that scope back down, but whenever we're in the throes of the project, if the client starts talking about something, I'd like to change the scope on this or do this and that, the creative person says, wow, that's amazing, we could do this or that. Let me engage you, re-engage you with the business side, so that the creative can be creative without having to worry so much about the financial side.
That's almost a whole nother podcast in and of itself, talking about dividing and conquering the workload properly and why there's so much value in it. But what about, let's say you moved on to the budget and the SOW. Now, let's talk about this stage. So you made that first impression, but now you're trying to lock the deal down. What's the process there?
Never assume the client knows. I mean, this is direct. The agencies are going to know this more, because there's always that client that's an agent and the client that's, direct to client stuff. So I feel like, know who you're talking to first. Do they have an active knowledge of the video production world? Can you use terminology that, that they understand? And, because a lot of that stuff we like to drop, all those name calls, shooting on the, 8K, blah, 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 VistaVision, but, it increases distrust in a lot of clients. They're talking about widgets I don't understand. Right, I don't feel comfortable here. I would say avoid getting caught up in the details, and even from the initial meeting, moving into the budget side, continue to sell them on your vision. Right. Talk about what they're getting, not how you're going to get it. Talk about what's
so easy to get caught up in the gear. We're going to have a red or an airy Alexa there. You're going to love it.
I don't care.
Agencies sometimes, but
Sure, exactly.
And when they're spending the money and they show up on set, like, that's a different story. Like, put it in the box, have it like beautiful, put their logo on the the splash screen. You got it. But at this, from the beginning standpoint, it's, many of our estimates go out, they have one number and what you're getting. There's not a breakdown, because that's not,
We really do try to push it, though. I just want to jump on what Alex said. It's really easy to get caught up in our terminology in our world. But again, going back to the client experience, their experience is that they're not video experts. And so you need to talk about a value that they're going to receive from maybe an Alexa, whatever. Sure. So that's where the value is, not the type of gear necessarily. And
right. Absolutely.
And so they feel like they can appreciate the process without having to understand all the inner workings of it.
And if there's a lot of back and forth, and you're talking about, hey, do I include this? Do I include that? And they want to know, like, you better be able to justify going into it why you're choosing to shoot on this, or why a city cam is right for the project, because it frees up, the camera, because it's more of athletic shoot, and you need to have energy in this project. All those things that make sense, in the end,
Okay, so here we get to the thorny ground. At least I always found this to be the thorny ground. Pre-production, when you've maybe trimmed a little off the budget because the client says they can provide a lot of things. And this is a classic negotiation tool. And it's a good one because it shows that you care and you're trying to help them with the budget, but it's a dangerous water. And that is that during pre-pro, let's say that you've promised the client that they'll be able to help out, but then they maybe don't help out the way they said they were going to, or they drop the balls, et cetera.
Yeah. I think from the get-go, if you can include it in the budget and do it yourself, then do it. There certainly, there have been clients in the past that promises something and didn't deliver. I mean, very quickly you find out that your project is not their number one priority in many cases. Right. And so what it takes to get, the 60 extras that they promised is another full-time job of somebody that they should be paying you to do, So I think, if it seems above and beyond where they're at, or what they can provide, then it needs to be discussed in detail, and probably be on paper too,
Yeah. It always brought up the most thorny issues when it would be like, you all get there and suddenly there's just a huge amount of work that the client didn't do. And you can't treat them like an employee or anything like that. You can't, that can be a tough waters.
It absolutely can. It goes back to what we were saying earlier about communication and setting expectations is kind of the key, the cornerstone of this whole conversation really, but by trying to communicate that up front and communicate it in writing as to what the joint responsibilities
there you go,
are.
Steve. Now you're talking. I mean, you get that. It's so critical to have that. So in the SOW, just absolutely crystal when when you make that deal, because people do respond to that. I found like that if you go back and say, now remember in the deal here, I guess we did say that, we better come through. And
exactly,
when interviews are people involved, especially like, if you're interviewing people, from their company, never cut hair and makeup. Yeah. That's huge, because they're just going to turn around and go, I look terrible and I'll never.
I love that you're saying that, because that was something we learned the hard way. It took us so many times of doing it the wrong way and cutting it because people said, we don't need that. We'll come in. Yeah.
Do you really want the first AD walking up to the person being interviewed with a little bit of D shine? It's like, no, thank you. It just, and two, never shoot on the location of a cat or of a client, rather their home, their specific home. Like, sometimes I go, I'll offer up my home. And regardless of what you do, you know what film crews do to homes. We put our tennis balls on those C stands, but it's an invasion. It's always
that's great advice. That's really, really good. So let's jump to set now, since you bring that up. So set is kind of the fun place, certainly for agency. To me, it was I always feel like production is literally why we got into this, but it's such a small part, but it's always the most fun, the day that you look forward to, the day often that your client really looks forward to. So how do you set the stage for that? And how do you give them that singular experience on the day of production?
I agree 100%, Max. It's like the coolest part. Like all that work goes into this, and it should be another world. And the expectations should be set from the, hey guys, this is how big it is. This is what we're doing. This is where you're sitting. You can get your, food here, whatever, if they're not used to the set environment. But I feel like there is something magical about it, because everybody's working hard for a single goal that includes the client, watching it, sitting there, feeling it out, seeing the magic happen. And I think that, that is, if what sins you commit in the pre-production can be, covered up on the set experience, right? Because it should be a good experience. It should be a good experience.
Plus, I think sometimes we've seen where we haven't clearly discussed with the client when they come on set as to what they're going to experience that day.
Yeah,
they're asking questions about, well, when are the talents going to be here and this, and how are we doing that, and when's lunch? And so just right up front to kind of walk them through the set, explain the day, what they're going to be seeing, what's going on, because we just assume, they know the process. They don't. Right. And the more questions you remove up front, then the less questions and issues are on the back end.
Absolutely. And I mean, one thing that I always notice is that the first half an hour is critical and lunch is critical. But after the first half an hour, once it's like, it gets really boring really fast for folks. I mean, they'll watch the monitor, but there's only so many times you do 17 takes of someone moving their hand that people just start to get on their phone. And so that first half hour is just, if you set the tone well there, you're kind of golden, as long as lunch is good.
100,000%. And I 100%. Yeah, I completely agree. And, I think they need to see the money if they're spending it, show them the big jib and make the, take them to the camera. I mean, you don't have to continue to quote unquote sell. It's, you're going, it's we're moving, we got things to do. And in those frazzled moments that we all experience on set, I just think if they can look at you as a director or look at your director and see calm and see a plan, a good client isn't going, they're going to suggest, they're going to whisper in your ear, but they're not going to react like, like everything's on fire. That's part of it. Production is all about that,
And I would say
it's always a fire, but how big a fire it gets is
and just the critical part of that is how the crew themselves, before we ever get started in our initial meeting, as the day starts, make sure everybody's clear, understands, and if there's an issue, it's whispered or communicated. It's not out loud, so that confidence Alex was talking about, the client sees that through the crew. And so there could be a problem going on that they don't have a clue about.
Yeah, and have them talk. Have a point person. Have that they need to be talking to one person about any issues they have with what's going on or what's being shot. Like, a lot of clients will instantly become directors if they feel a sense, hey, something's going on. It's like, wait a second, you don't want that in front of your crew. You don't want that in front of, you just don't want them to have to do that. That's what they're paying you for, right?
That chain of command is absolutely critical. 100%. And the set etiquette is critical and all that kind of jazz. So moving on to post. So I personally find this to be, you can have everything go so well. And even the first draft comes out and it's great and they love it. And yet somehow everything falls apart in post because of all the back and forth. And how do you manage that part of the experience? And also, you get the scope creep invariably comes in during post, but the more visual effects you get, obviously, I don't even want to get into visual effects. Let's just assume we have a shoot here that has not got too many visual effects, but let's just say like, we're talking about something that is fairly straightforward. How do you keep post on the rails and the client feeling heard and understood?
I think, most production companies, and we did in the beginning, you get through production and you want to take a little bit of a rest, right? You don't necessarily hit the ground running right after. And the best thing you can do is send them polished up dailies if they're not asking for it.
Yep.
Hey,
I love
this is looking great. This is beautiful.
Yes.
I'm loving what I'm seeing. You did a great job on your interview, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Could be stills, could be video.
Could be any, exactly. Right. Whatever they see, obviously, make sure it's a pretty part of it, and that it's polished up. You're not sending them, C-logged out, weird stuff, flat images or anything like that. But I would say that don't fight the urge to pause the dialogue, roll right from production into post. Just don't let that gap happen, from the rough to the fine cut, from the fine cut to the final. I mean, all those sort of just keep the conversation going. Keep the conversation going, and keep them updated, even if it's not a real update. And and editing's happening. Hey, just got through the second session. Yeah, up to a minute and a half, looking great.
Yeah, during the post process, silence is the enemy. You definitely don't want that. Communicate.
And do you use? Go ahead.
No, I think I agree with you, Max. It's the most nervous part from a client's perspective. Did we do it? Like, is this going to be successful? I felt like it was successful.
Right.
So anything you do to quell that terrifying
fear. And what, have you moved to using like Frame.io or Vimeo or something like that to do reviews and that, to help the client be able to get more involved more easily? It seems like there's a lot of good tech out there to.
Yeah. I think 2 years ago we started using Frame.io, and it saved them so much frustration, hundreds of hours probably from our perspective, from a editing standpoint. And I think the goal for post is a little means a lot. Like just making things simple for them to do. If they can hit spacebar and write down a comment, and then the team, that's so much better than these email threads. I mean, you remember those? It's just never-ending email threads of feedback that didn't even have time codes. It's like,
sure,
that's and hyperlinking back to the next email you send. Like, don't have them search back through for the link you sent. Hyperlink the newest one too.
But how do you navigate the scope creep? How do you navigate you had 5 reviews in the contract, and you're on their 7th, and you're not really wanting to get to. How do you work with that? What are the methods of trying to ease the client back into reality?
I think a big part of it is it's identifying what makes up an assembly cut, what a rough cut. Okay, no more chronological changes past a rough. Yeah. Okay, no more chronological, no more, major B-roll changes past an approval cut. Everybody kind of has their own, sort of, phase of post-production, But like, I think it's like, hey, if you go back, if we're 3/4 of the way in, if you're going back and changing major chronological things that really, could affect the edit, we need to talk about money. And usually it's just hourly. It's just beyond that, we're usually agreeing on a price and knowing that we can do it within a certain amount. That's what the client has been told, and that's what we're communicating. Past that, it's just how much time it is extra to complete what
it's
they're asking.
Really about positioning too, because if the client starts to ask, as Alex said, we define it up front, they understand it, which we keep them abreast of where they are against those.
That's critical, Steve. I think.
Yeah.
But if they then say we keep pushing about that from the creative side, we say absolutely we can do that. let's talk about what it will cost to execute that above and beyond.
Sure. I mean, we found that. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say that usually short circuits the conversation, brings it back into scope, or then at least you're going to get paid for the creep that you've experienced.
Absolutely. We found that when we started prefacing edits with what the edit was and we just used boilerplate chunks that we wrote up for each stage of it that we'd have our editor ship with the edit. And it really helped a lot to give them clear, you are here type,
Right.
you know, and we find that really helps them to stay within the lines. And also, again, going, Steve, back to something you said, back to that statement of work at the very beginning and making it really clear what the editing process is going to look like. It's kind of like good fences make good neighbors. A good statement of work is kind of at the core of so much of a good client relationship, right?
Exactly.
It gives the parameters to constantly, you know, people, we're doing business here. And that's the thing. People want business to be clear and straightforward. And the more you do that with that clear SOW, it just sets that tone throughout the entire operation.
Totally agree.
And I feel like the communication side of posts too is tell them what you need from them. I want you to look at the chronological aspects of it. I want you to give me what are your ideas on tone? Not just what do you think? Right? Like tell them what you're looking for. Do you like the music? Do you like the tone? Do you like the way this was portrayed? Is it all the things as you're editing, this is the editor to the client directly or through the director, all those things that you're kind of thinking, oh man, maybe this is to this or this, that. Like communicate those to them because they will give you those answers and then they'll feel like they're a part of the process instead of, I love it. Looking good is great, but it's scary because of that ing. It's like, well, I'll wait for the approval cut and then give you all my feedback.
Yes. Yeah. All right, so let's assume you made it through post. You somehow got through all this. You're finally wrapping. Are you done? I mean, what's the, is that it? How do you wrap it?
Yeah, the wrapping is really just the next beginning phase of the post relationship. And I don't mean post-production, but the post-project phase. So we've really looked at it, Max. That's the opportunity for us to really connect with the client to create that next project. Because if they're pleased with the project you just delivered, then hopefully you've learned something about that account, what their needs are, whether it's for social media related assets or whatever. So you've now got that next conversation to have. And so we really, the wrap starts the ongoing communication piece and not stalking them or harassing them, but really just in a timed, maybe once every quarter, if you see an article that's related back to what was important to them then, you're emailing it to them and just keeping them abreast that you're there and we're thinking about you and trying to be a value-added partner. And so that's, going all the way back to client retention. I think that probably helps client retention more than just about anything is you don't become a silent partner. Yeah.
Yeah. You just reminded me too, Steve, of something during the shoot that again, on set, it's a wonderful time. If you do have that division of work where say you're more the business person, but you drop in on the set and it's just often it's a great time to talk about, hey, you're kind of bored sitting here and I'm kind of here. And why don't we talk about some new stuff coming down the line? Right. It often can be a really nice moment to instead of really just say, what do you got going on? What else are your problems? Mm-hmm. And on set can just be a wonderful time. They're in such a good mood, almost normally. They're in such a good mood. And it's really fun. And they're seeing your incredible team out there just killing it. And that's what is amazing, right? Watching your guys just crush it and move smoothly like a SWAT team. And suddenly, you're, hey, what else what are your problems right now? And that's just another wonderful time. And then when the wrap comes, suddenly you have, hey, remember that stuff we talked about on set? Let's get back to that. That can be a really nice, the division of labor being critical because you're not the director.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Usually when he's talking to the client about that, we're trying to fix something on set. That's the way it works.
That's
the redirect.
Just go. I think it's, from the standpoint of like, after, during on set and whatnot too, it's like, it's a great opportunity. I don't think you should ever on set talk about things that didn't happen. The things that you wanted, like obviously that's a very negative outlook. And I think in the same way, time passes and the project, is released and whatever. And then you can a little bit of that, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? But I think as a rule of thumb, you don't want to talk about what they could have had at any point past that pre-production, process.
Yep. Those are dead. Those things are
those are dead, and bring them back in another form and another project by throwing. Hey, maybe their competitor comes out with something. Hey, did you check this out? I love the way this looks. Or hey, any of those sort of things, like where you're thinking when they're focused on something else, but between projects, you're thinking of the next thing for them. That's, they're paying an agency for that too. And even a production company straight to client and or to an agency too, just the fact that you're thinking of them between it is important.
And I would just add one more thing about when we wrap. A lot of times when we send that final deliverable, we mentally, we've signed off on it psychologically. I think it's important to remember that at that point, the client then has to start some of their work to get it put into the right platform, set up. So for us to reach back out, a week or two later and just say, hey, do you need any help on formatting or whatever you need to try to get this out to the distribution you need? I think it's just a value add. And it's a low cost thing from our perspective to do, but it'd be very important to the client.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I lost a client one time because I started charging for all that stuff at the end, and it was what I thought. They're taking my time to do this and everything, and it didn't work out, and I wish I would have taken the more generous approach. And I learned the hard way to exactly what you're saying, Steve. It's no big deal for us to hit a couple extra buttons and output it in a few different formats or crop it just a touch or do, whatever it is. We're not talking full different deliverables here, but we're just talking about little things for spec. And now ever since then, I learned that, boy, you just gave up, $50,000 for $300,
exactly.
And that can be real dumb.
Well, that's not a relationship, right? It's not, if you're looking for you do something for me, I do something for you. Do we really want to have those relationships? It's like,
because it just means whoever comes in cheaper next time will get the project.
And you have a chance to end this round, so to speak, on a generous note. So last thing. So you folks are obviously the bosses of the organization at Elements, but how do you pass this through your organization? Because I think they're going to have interactions with your editors. They're going to have interactions with your grips. They're going to have interactions with folks that are going to be outside of your control immediately. And so how do you ensure that they reflect what you want from Elements?
You share those positive and negative experiences with your staff and your crew. Like you talk about, hey, so-and-so just came in and they said that was one of the greatest videos they've ever seen. And that we just helped them sell, $12 million worth of blah, 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 blah. I mean, like you share those because it hypes people up. It adds purpose, and that's what we all live for on the creative side of things, right? It's just, we that feedback is more important than the paycheck. Half the time, right? And just that's exciting. And obviously depending on, who it's coming from, if they're super creative and, obviously there's, you see the objective. If the objective is one and we did what was asked, and like, there's that sort of, excitement and fulfillment. And on the creative side, if, so-and-so saw it and then it was passed over to a different creative person and another agency, there's that growth sort of like, how many people are seeing this? What do people who are like-minded say about my work? It's like an artist critiquing artists,
And it's a little bit of a challenge too for us because the team here are direct employees, but then when we bring in freelance, you can do everything you want to with direct employees on seminars, training, whatever. So from, the day of trying to have that meeting, the pre-meeting before the actual production takes place, so that everybody's on the same sheet of music, explaining to the client what's important, what the opportunity is for future with them, and being able to hopefully get everybody on the same sheet of music for that.
Do debriefs. Right. Do debriefs after projects. I know it's easy to roll into the next one. Talk about what was done. from a client experience, it just has to be part of the workflow. It just has to be part of the workflow.
It does.
Absolutely.
It's not something you can just do afterwards, because you'll never do it unless it's on that checklist. Unless, you were clicking a button and going, did I get feedback from the client, or have they approved this? Or did we send that initial follow-up email? Like initial follow-up email on your workflow right after, rough cut sent. It's like that. It just needs to be a part of it. It's a push button thing, and it has to be worked in somehow.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. It's so funny. Thank you, fellas, so much, because this, just coming off of this, I just can't help but think, wow, this is just the core of everything. I mean, it is truly the core of everything. It's we do so much. A good client relationship is the glue that just holds the whole damn thing together, isn't it?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, it is.
Absolutely. It's that's how the stars align.
Yeah.
And you get the project, right? And it becomes incredible, and it becomes, bigger than it ever was intended to be, is when you have the trust of the client, and and they have trust in you, and it's just, hey, let's actually communicate. Yeah. Let's actually make this as good as we possibly can.
And that's where you get the greatest creative freedom. Absolutely. On our side,
and your side,
and their pocketbook a little bit looser as well too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just, it's the beginning and the end of it all. So this has been a great one to do with you fellas. And I cannot thank you enough for your time and your expertise and all. So thank you so much. We're out of time, but hopefully this has been as enlightening for our listeners as it has been for me. I really, really appreciate it. And anything you want to end with, or any last thoughts that we might have missed?
No, I think the common theme through it all, Max, was for us, it's communication and setting expectations. Everything else just falls around that.
I love it. Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you,
Max.
So much, Alex. We appreciate it. That's Elements Video. If you guys want to shout out for your URL or anything,
www.elements-studio.net. Elements. That's right. Studio.net.
And they're in North Carolina. Do they still call it North Kakalaki?
Yeah,
they do. Okay.
North Kakalaki.
North Kakalaki. Okay,
they're not Appalachian. They're Appalachian. Let's just get that right.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Max.
Bye.